Hi everybody, we are having a live discussion here backstage at COP29. I'm in the privileged company of Achim Steiner, who is the administrator of the United Nations Development Programme. Thanks very much for being with us on Euronews.
Pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
We've already seen a deal here related to part of Article 6, which is this big concept of kind of carbon markets, basically. Yeah. What we've seen so far, can you explain it to us in simple terms we're all going to understand? And what is the objective with carbon markets? What's the ideal scenario?
You know, in our global context, we have the ability to use carbon sinks, places where, for example, tropical forests, wetlands absorb a great deal of carbon dioxide. This is an asset in our ability to try and sequester carbon, to take it out of the atmosphere. Nature has perfected this process. Some countries have the ability to absorb carbon because they're actually very low emitters. In our global economic system, we've tried to develop different forms of markets, and carbon markets therefore allow a polluter to be able to compensate for their pollution by investing, for instance, in an expansion of forests.
So would that be a country that would saying, or would it be a company? Who's doing
both.
that?
I mean, it is countries, companies, landowners, and this is where one of the challenges has arisen. How do you ensure a high integrity carbon market? There is a carbon market that under the Climate Convention is being regulated, and then there are voluntary carbon markets. In UNDP, we are investing heavily now in a high integrity carbon markets initiative, because what we are trying to achieve is to have an effective, efficient, transparent market where people are not greenwashing, bluewashing, but they are genuinely expanding the capacity of our planet to sequester carbon, and that those who provide their land and their natural ecosystems for that purpose are also receiving a payment for that, because it allows them to maintain that land use.
Do you think that's going to happen at this COP? We're going to come up with a decent, credible, transparent carbon market system. Is your feeling we're going to get that across the line in the next 2 weeks?
I think there is good reasons to be hopeful. We have spent a number of years trying to navigate very complex mechanisms, reporting, and also accountability and transparency elements. I think we're very close to it, and it could well be one of the outcomes of Baku, that famous Article 6 of the Convention is finally acted on.
Let's get down to numbers. Prices per tonne of carbon, then, if you want a functioning market to be working, to give somebody in the incentive to not build something new by smashing down a forest or destroying a wetland. What are some of the numbers that people are talking about? Because I've got some in my head, but I'd be interested to hear yours per tonne.
I would not put a singular price on. If you are an African farmer and essentially you have neither access to electricity, therefore not to irrigation, therefore not to the means by which modern agriculture can also create more resilience, you're going to look at the incentives in a very different way. If you're looking at a steel corporation or another heavy electricity consuming sector, obviously a ton of carbon takes on a very different relative price in your calculations. I think what we have to do is recognize that every country, every sector needs to have a sufficiently strong incentive to decarbonize. Sometimes that may simply be to remove perverse subsidies. Oddly enough, we, as I mentioned earlier on, are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in artificially encouraging people to use fossil fuels because we subsidize them. And therefore, sometimes removing the subsidy is already a correction measure. Then the incentives with carbon prices per ton are also the kind of incentives that have to do with those who have to change a land use decision or an energy infrastructure decision. That has to do with costs that are available to them. I think we are learning a lot, and we'll learn a great deal more about how to optimize carbon pricing. But what is quite clear is it's still too low.